Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. Cows have more than 800 types of blood. This enormous diversity is due to the large number of genetic combinations in their blood systems, much more complex than those of humans. This variation is useful in veterinary research and breeding programs, as it allows the study of inheritance, compatibility, and disease resistance within livestock. Syngultus is another name for hiccups. It is the medical term used to describe those involuntary contractions of the diaphragm that produce the characteristic sound. Although it is usually temporary and goes away on its own, in rare cases, it can become persistent and require medical attention if it lasts too long. The growth cycle of eyelashes is only 3 months, one of the reasons they do not grow very long. In fact, they fall out daily. Between 1 and 5 eyelashes fall from your face each day. This process is completely normal and is part of the natural renewal cycle of hair, allowing new lashes to grow to replace those that shed, maintaining their function of protecting the eyes from dust and other particles. The Welwitschia plant that grows in the Namib Desert can live 1,000 years. In fact, there are some species that exist right now that, through carbon dating, have been shown to be 15 centuries old. There is a company called Hangover Helpers that, for $20 per person, will bring you Gatorade, cook you a homemade breakfast burrito, completely clean the room where your party took place, and wash all the dirty dishes. It is possible for a man to fracture his penis. It is extremely painful and will cause a loud cracking sound. This happens when the internal tissues tear during a sudden bend, usually in situations of abrupt pressure. It is a medical emergency that requires immediate attention to avoid long-term complications, and although it is uncommon, it is well documented in medicine. Chickens can detect and see tones of light and color better than humans. They also have a better ability to detect movement than we do, which is important for farmers since artificial lights must be avoided because they flicker, and this can cause a flock to start fighting among themselves. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, Svetlana Pankratova of Russia holds the record for the woman with the longest legs in the world. Her legs measured 4.3 feet long as of July 8, 2003. The first satellite of the United States, Explorer 1, was launched into space on January 31, 1958. It was approximately twice the size of a basketball and only weighed 30 pounds. Despite its size, it made a key discovery by detecting the radiation belts that surround the Earth, known as the Van Allen belts, marking an important advance in early space exploration. When cauliflower grows quickly, it creates a strong cracking sound because its florets rub against each other. This is real. It is known as cauliflower cracking. This sound can be perceived in very quiet environments and is due to rapid cellular growth and internal pressure between the structures. Although it is subtle for humans, it shows how active plant life can be even without us noticing it at first glance. The only mounted whale in the world, known as the Malm whale, is on display at the Natural History Museum of Sweden. It was found stranded on the rocks on October 29, 1865, when it swam too close to land in Askim Bay, south of Gothenburg. It measured more than 52 feet long and weighed around 25 tons. The largest living organism in the world is located in Malheur National Forest. It is called Armillaria ostoyae, or the humongous fungus. It covers 2,385 acres. This gigantic organism extends underground as a network of mycelium that connects trees over miles. It is estimated to be thousands of years old, and although it is not visible in its entirety, it affects forests by parasitizing roots and weakening some trees. A study published in BMC Evolutionary Biology found that when the spinal shapes of modern humans who suffer from lower back pain were analyzed, they have spines that are similar to those of chimpanzees and are therefore less adapted for upright walking. According to the American Cancer Society, the cassava plant can be highly toxic if it is not prepared properly. It naturally produces cyanide, which is poisonous to humans, but the cyanide is removed, of course, during processing, so your cassava pudding should be perfectly fine. Nunavut, in the Northwest Territories, has the lowest graduation rate in Canada. Only 57% of students actually graduate from high school. China has designated parking spaces for female drivers that are 50% larger than normal spaces. These spaces appeared in some shopping centers and were presented as a way to make maneuvering easier, although they also generated criticism for being considered stereotypes. Over time, this type of signage became less common, and in many places, it was removed after public debate. Ichthyphalophobia is an uncommon fear related to certain aspects of the human body. The term comes from Greek, ithi, which means straight, phallos, which refers to the male organ, and phobia, which means fear. The growling noises your stomach makes when you are hungry are caused by muscular activity in the walls of your stomach and small intestine. There are contractions in the stomach that break down ingested food and move gases. Those movements cause vibrations, and it is the vibrations that produce the growling sound. When the Statue of Liberty was sent from France to New York, it was in 350 pieces and packed in 214 crates. It was transported by ship in 1885 and then assembled on its pedestal on Liberty Island. The internal structure was designed by Gustav Eiffel, which allowed the statue to withstand strong winds and temperature changes without being damaged. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park, located along the border of North Carolina and Tennessee, is the most visited national park in the United States. Each year, it receives more than 12 million visitors, even surpassing iconic parks like the Grand Canyon. It is famous for its bluish haze caused by organic compounds from vegetation. In addition, it is home to more than 19,000 recorded species, and it is believed that tens of thousands more may still be unidentified. According to Guinness World Records, Bluey, an Australian cattle dog from Rochester, Victoria, in Australia, was the oldest dog ever recorded. He was 29 years and 5 months old. He was born in 1910 and was put down on November 14, 1939. The proper medical term for burping is eructation. It is also used in clinical contexts to describe the release of gas accumulated in the stomach through the esophagus, something completely normal in digestion. In medicine, when it occurs too frequently or is accompanied by other symptoms, it may be related to digestive problems such as reflux or excessive air swallowing while eating. From the 16th century to the 1960s, Egyptian mummies were ground up and used to produce a brown paint color called mummy brown. The powder was mixed with white resin and myrrh to produce a deep brown pigment. If you have delusions in which you believe you are a wolf or another wild animal, you suffer from what is called lycanthropy. In medicine, it is known as clinical lycanthropy, a rare disorder in which the person may feel or claim that they transform into an animal. It is usually associated with psychiatric episodes such as psychotic or neurological disorders, and it has been documented in different cultures throughout history. The microscopic tardigrade, also known as the water bear or moss piglet, is one of the most resilient creatures in the world. It can go a decade without water. In that state, it reduces almost all of its metabolic activity and shrinks into a kind of dry capsule. It can also survive extreme temperatures, intense radiation, and even the vacuum of space, which has sparked the interest of scientists studying its potential applications in biotechnology. According to Guinness World Records, Anthony Victor from India has the longest ear hair in history. It measures more than 7 inches at its longest point. Gummy candies in the shape of bears were originally called dancing bears. Hans Riegel originally created them in 1920, and they were originally made of licorice. Over time, they changed to fruity flavors and quickly became popular in Europe. The shape was inspired by trained bears that were common at fairs of the time, and their small size made them accessible even in times of scarcity. The black and white patterns on the underside of a humpback whale are distinctive for each whale. The shape and color patterns on their dorsal fins and tails are like fingerprints for humans. Researchers use photographs of their tails to identify them and track their migratory routes over thousands of miles between feeding and breeding areas. Hawks have vision that is approximately 8 times more precise than that of humans. They have up to 1 million photoreceptors in the retina, compared to only 200,000 in humans. This allows them to detect prey at great distances and see details with great sharpness even while flying at high speed, which makes them extremely efficient hunters. The vampire fish impales its prey with its long, sharp fangs. Its fangs can grow up to 6 inches long. Also known as payada, it lives in rivers of South America and has teeth so long that they fit into special cavities in its skull, which allows it to close its mouth without injuring itself while stalking other fish in fast-moving waters. The peacock spider performs a small mating dance to attract a partner. Each type of peacock spider has its own style of dance. Males raise their legs and display a fan of bright colors on their abdomen, combining rhythmic movements with vibrations to catch the female's attention, who is usually very selective before accepting courtship. There is a clown motel in Tonopah, Nevada that is decorated with hundreds of clowns and is located right next to a cemetery. The White House physician, Admiral Joel T. Boone, invented a game called Hoover Ball for President Hoover. It was a combination of tennis, volleyball, and a medicine ball, created to help keep President Hoover in good physical shape. In 1965, Apollo astronauts traveled to Iceland for field training because it is the place that most closely resembles the moon due to its lack of vegetation and volcanic geology. There, they practiced how to identify rocks and formations similar to those they would find on the lunar surface. Some of the sites they explored, such as lava fields and craters, are still used today for geological studies and space simulations. The Chinese have recorded sightings of solar eclipses since 720 before Christ. These records were kept in detailed imperial chronicles and were so precise that they are used today to compare modern astronomical calculations. In ancient China, eclipses were interpreted as celestial signs, and court astronomers had the responsibility of predicting them, since failing to do so could be considered a serious error before the emperor. The mako shark is the fastest shark in the world. It can swim as fast as 60 miles per hour. To put it into perspective, the average shark only swims at a speed of 1.5 miles per hour. The 10 documented people who have lived the longest are all women. Each ranges between 116 and 122 years of age, and they remained active until the end. The longest lived recorded is Jean Calment, who reached 122 years. Many verified cases come from Europe and Japan, and they tend to share simple routines, close family networks, and consistent habits rather than strict diets or extraordinary secrets. The Hammerschwand elevator in Switzerland is the tallest outdoor elevator in Europe. It connects a rock path with the Hammerschwand lookout on a plateau overlooking Lake Lucerne. It carries passengers 502 feet to the top in less than 1 minute. The city of Kiruna in Sweden has been experiencing ground deformation due to the activity of a large iron mine operated by LKAB. As a result, the government and the company initiated an ambitious project to relocate entire parts of the city. The relocation has already been underway for several years, with historic buildings moved or rebuilt, and new urban areas developing several kilometers from the original center. The airplane that crashed in the movie The Dark Knight Rises, with the use of computer-generated special effects, actually crashed the following year, killing 2 people on board. On September 4, 2016, Pope Francis canonized Mother Teresa, officially declaring her Saint Teresa of Calcutta. This recognition occurred nearly 20 years after her death in 1997, following a process that confirmed her humanitarian legacy and the verification of miracles attributed to her intercession. In 1985, Lynette Woodard became the first woman to play for the Harlem Globetrotters. Since then, she has played in the WNBA and has been inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame and the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. There is no time zone in Antarctica, so scientists who live there while conducting research usually follow the time zone of their home country. In addition, due to how Antarctica is positioned, daylight saving time is useless. Most of the area experiences 24 hours of sunlight during the summer and 24 hours of darkness during the winter. Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story was actually named in honor of astronaut Buzz Aldrin, the second astronaut to walk on the moon. His name pays tribute to the space age and connects with the spirit of exploration that marked missions such as Apollo 11, which helps give the character a more credible and symbolic identity within the story. It is illegal in Atlanta, Georgia, to tie a giraffe to a telephone pole or a streetlight. Take a moment to think about that. The Philippines flies its flag upside down when it is at war. This caused great confusion and tension in 2010 when the flag was displayed inverted behind the president at that time during his meeting with President Obama and other leaders of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Everyone thought it was an act of war. American Express began in 1850 as a delivery service for cargo and valuables. The brand new United States Postal Service was not reliable at that time and only allowed the sending of letter-sized envelopes. This provided a business opportunity for the company to ship larger packages, but the company eventually pivoted when it began to notice more profits from a sector of its customer base that included banks and other financial institutions. Salt and pepper actually come in liquid form in space. If astronauts tried to sprinkle normal salt and pepper, they would simply float everywhere. That is why at NASA, they dissolve them in water to apply them with droppers and prevent them from dispersing in microgravity. where even small particles can interfere with equipment or be easily inhaled inside the spacecraft. The full official name of the state of Rhode Island was for centuries Rhode Island and Providence Plantations. In 2010, voters decided to keep the name after a referendum, although in practice, almost no one used it. However, in 2020, after another referendum, the state officially approved shortening it to simply Rhode Island, removing the Providence Plantations part. A 68-year-old grandmother from Western Wales was followed by and surrounded for 2 days by 20,000 bees. They were actually trying to rescue their queen bee, which, without her knowing, had gotten into her Mitsubishi Outlander. Beekeepers were called to safely remove them. Cholima, a mythical winged horse, is the national animal of North Korea. In the country's culture, it symbolizes speed, endurance, and progress, and it has been used as an emblem in monuments, stamps, and state propaganda. It even gave its name to a reconstruction and development movement launched in the mid-20th century to motivate the population to work faster. Elephant Island, located off the coast of Antarctica, has elephant moss growing on it that is more than 5,500 years old. This type of moss can survive extreme cold and dryness, growing only about 0.04 inches per year, which allows some colonies to remain alive for millennia and act as natural records of the region's ancient climate. Earwax is not wax at all. The technical term for it is cerumen, and it mainly consists of shed skin layers. It is composed of approximately 60% keratin, between 12 and 20% long-chain saturated and unsaturated fatty acids, squalene, alcohols, and between 6 and 9% cholesterol. Every spring in Sweetwater, Texas, a rattlesnake roundup is held. For 3 days, snake hunters bring their catches, which end up being thousands of snakes, for which they are paid $5 per pound. The Junior Chamber of Commerce started the tradition in 1958 to address snake overpopulation. The Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt is the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world that still exists. The rest, including the Colossus of Rhodes, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus, the Temple of Artemis, and the statue of Zeus, were all destroyed. According to a study led by Yegor Malyshev, a zoologist at St. Petersburg State University, the red kangaroo and the eastern gray kangaroo are almost always left-handed. Research with several species of marsupials showed that they prefer to use their left paw for tasks such as feeding or supporting themselves, something uncommon outside of primates, and that suggests a more complex brain lateralization than previously thought in these animals. According to a study conducted by researchers at the Yale School of Public Health, people who read books live an average of 2 years longer than those who do not. The analysis followed thousands of adults over several years and found that the habit of regular reading, especially books, was associated with greater longevity compared to those who did not read or only consumed other media. It was also observed that even reading a few minutes a day already made a difference. The bootlace worm is the largest species of ribbon worm. They can grow up to 197 feet long, which is longer than a blue whale. This animal, known scientifically as Lineus longissimus, inhabits shallow marine waters and usually remains hidden under sand or among rocks. In addition, it produces a toxin that helps it immobilize its prey, making it a surprisingly effective predator despite its appearance. The largest ketchup bottle in the world measures nearly 69 feet tall, perched on top of a 100-foot steel tower located in Collinsville, Illinois. It is the water tower at the former Brooks Ketchup plant and headquarters, and Collinsville celebrates the world's largest ketchup bottle festival every year. Port Lincoln, Australia celebrates an annual festival called Tuna Rama. The main event is the World Championship Tuna Toss, where the winner is the one who can throw their tuna the farthest. Female pandas usually give birth to a single cub, but if they have 2 cubs, they will normally care for one and abandon the other. This is because raising 2 cubs at the same time requires too much energy. In conservation centers, caregivers often swap the cubs with the mother so that both receive attention, increasing their chances of survival. Saturn's rings are composed of dust, rock, and ice accumulated from passing comets, meteorite impacts on Saturn's moons, and the planet's gravity pulling material from its moons. Most of these particles are water ice, which gives them their characteristic brightness. Although they appear solid from a distance, they are made up of fragments that range from tiny grains to house-sized blocks, all orbiting at high speed around the planet. Serbian woman Bojana Danilovic has a rare brain condition called spatial orientation phenomenon, which causes her to see everything upside down. She uses an inverted computer screen and keyboard at work, as well as special forms that are easier to complete upside down. And yes, at home, she watches a television that is upside down. The dandelion plant, or weed, is edible. The leaves can be eaten in salads or steamed. The flowers are sweet and crunchy, and they can be eaten battered, fried, or raw. They can even be used to make wine, and the roots can be dried and roasted to be used as a coffee substitute. -40 degrees Fahrenheit is the same temperature as -40 degrees Celsius. Fahrenheit devised his scale using the coldest temperature he could produce using brine as 0 and body temperature as 100. Celsius used the freezing and boiling points of water as his 0 and 100. Neither of them was thinking about -40 degrees. It just worked out that way. Fireflies are actually beetles, not flies. Most of them have wings and belong to the same family as glowworms. Their characteristic glow is produced through a chemical reaction called bioluminescence, which they use to communicate and attract mates. Each species has its own flashing pattern, which allows them to recognize each other even in the dark. In the year 2000, Kathy Summers, 19 years old, paid $1,025 on eBay for the leftovers of a piece of French toast from Justin Timberlake after he finished a breakfast interview at the studio of New York radio station Z100. The DJ put it on eBay, and the rest is history. The ancient Greeks valued political participation and collective government. The term idiot was used in ancient Greece to describe someone who did not contribute to politics or to the community. The word comes from the Greek idiotes, which referred to a private person or someone who concerned themselves only with personal matters, without being involved in the public life of the polis. Llamas are pack animals that can carry up to 75 pounds for up to 20 miles. However, if you overload one, it will refuse to move, lie down, and spit at you or hiss until you lighten its load. This behavior is a form of defense and communication. In addition, they have been used for centuries in the Andes as a means of transport, especially in mountainous terrain where other animals do not adapt as well. Optical illusion speed bumps are being used to slow down drivers. One example is a three-dimensional image of a small girl chasing a ball. This was first introduced in Vancouver, and now other provinces and states in the United States are experimenting with it. There is an olive tree located in the village of Al-Walaja, within the Bethlehem district in Palestine, that is more than 4,000 years old. It was named Al-Badawi in honor of a village sage who lived in Al-Walaja more than 200 years ago. The tree stands 39 feet tall and 82 feet in diameter and is compared to 10 average-sized olive trees combined. The personal finance website Finder.com has launched a programmable handbag designed to help you monitor and curb your impulsive spending. Using GPS tracking, it can be programmed to lock if you enter your pre-programmed danger zones. In fact, it will vibrate and flash lights to indicate how many times you have taken out your wallet. Oh, and it will actually turn on yellow lights and vibrate every 2 hours to remind you to put on sunscreen. All of this for the modest sum of $5,000. Brooks Brothers is the oldest American retail company still in operation today. The first store opened on April 7, 1818 on Cherry Street in New York City. At that time, it was called H&D.H. Brooks & Company. The oldest carousel in the country is the Flying Horses Carousel, located in Oak Bluffs on Martha's Vineyard. It was built in 1876 and is still in operation. It is one of the 20 carousels that survive that includes a ring machine, and people who grab the ring get a free ride. More than 180 languages and dialects are spoken in the city of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. In fact, Toronto is the most multicultural city on the planet, with half of its population born outside the country. This diversity is reflected in its neighborhoods, festivals, and cuisine, where cultures from all over the world coexist, making it one of the most varied and dynamic urban destinations. Because camels live in conditions where there is little water, their digestive systems squeeze their food until it is almost completely dry. In fact, their excrement is so dry that you can use it to start a fire. The northern pseudoscorpion that lives in the frigid territory of Yukon can survive without breathing for 17 days. It does this by entering a state of extremely low metabolism, which allows it to withstand extreme cold conditions and lack of oxygen. In addition, it is a tiny predator that feeds on mites and other small invertebrates, helping maintain balance in its environment. Australian Mark Murray has created a food combination called the ham dog. It is a hamburger and a hot dog combined and has a specially shaped bun. This invention even received a patent for its unique design, since the bun is split to accommodate both items at the same time, creating an unusual hybrid fast food experience. The largest gold nugget ever found was near Dunolly, Victoria, Australia, on February 5, 1869. It weighed an astonishing 159 pounds and measured 2 feet by 1 foot. It was melted down into ingots and sent to the Bank of England. It was known as the Welcome Stranger and was discovered by 2 prospectors during the gold rush, becoming one of the most famous finds in history. The hagfish has no jaws or bones in its body, and it is capable of tying itself into a knot. It also produces a slimy substance that can expand upon contact with water, which it uses to defend itself from predators by clogging their gills. Despite its primitive appearance, it has a rudimentary skull and keratin teeth that it uses to scrape flesh from dead animals on the ocean floor. Dr. Timothy Clark Smith of Vermont was so afraid of being buried alive that he left instructions to build a window leading to his coffin. He is currently buried in Evergreen Cemetery with a headstone that has a glass window of 1.18 feet that is still there. According to the World Health Organization, approximately 265,000 people die each year from burns that occur mainly in the home or workplace. Most of these cases are concentrated in low and middle-income countries, where safety conditions are more limited. Many of these deaths could be prevented with basic measures such as safe installations, risk education, and access to timely medical care. According to astronauts who have been on the moon, lunar dust smells like burnt gunpowder. This smell is not perceived in space, but when they returned to the module and the dust clung to their suits, upon contact with air, it released that characteristic odor, something that several astronauts mentioned after the Apollo missions. In 2012, the Australian government conducted research for tobacco product packaging. They determined that the color Pantone 448C, also known as opaque couche, is the most offensive color to place alongside health warnings associated with smoking. They used it to make cigarette packs look as unpleasant as possible to discourage people from smoking. In 1998, Sony had to recall 700,000 video cameras because customers discovered that the camera gave them the ability to see through clothing. They found that if the infrared lens was used in daylight, they could see details such as tattoos, underwear, and parts of the body through certain types of clothing. Koalas rarely drink water. Most of their water comes from eucalyptus leaves or from dew or rainwater on the surface of the leaves. They obtain more than 90% of their hydration from the leaves they eat, and only drink when they are sick or when there is not enough moisture in the leaves, such as during very dry weather. Pluto has a heart-shaped region known as Tombaugh Regio, which is made of ice, enormous glaciers of nitrogen, methane, and carbon dioxide. This region is surprisingly active for such a cold world, with surfaces that appear to renew slowly, suggesting internal movements of ice that push and redistribute material over time. If you buy a new car in Denmark, you must pay a very high registration tax that can exceed 100% of the vehicle's value. Believe it or not, this tax once reached as high as 180%, but it was gradually reduced starting in 2016 as part of fiscal reforms, and since then it has continued to be adjusted, especially for electric and more efficient vehicles. On the planet Jupiter, more than 90 moons have been discovered to date. This number has increased over time thanks to better telescopes and observation techniques, and it continues to grow as new small and irregular moons that orbit the gas giant are identified. Brigham Young University, where consuming alcohol goes against the honor code, celebrates Milktoberfest as a counterpart to Oktoberfest. The celebration promotes drinking milk and doing homework before midterm season. In the movie The Hateful Eight, actor Kurt Russell smashed an authentic Martin guitar from the 1870s that had been loaned from the Martin Guitar Museum. It was supposed to be swapped for a prop before he destroyed it, but unfortunately, no one told Kurt. Black Friday has been one of the days with the highest number of firearm background checks in the United States. On that date, the FBI has processed hundreds of thousands of requests in a single day. This day is often one of the busiest for gun purchases, driven by large discounts and the general increase in consumer activity during that shopping event. In Tanzania, child marriage has been a social concern for years. Nearly 2 out of 5 girls are married before turning 18 years old. In Sweden, you can stay in a hotel that has been converted from a jumbo 747 aircraft, known as the Jumbo Stay. It has 33 different rooms that measure 19.68 feet wide and 9.84 feet from floor to ceiling. All have flat-screen televisions, Wi-Fi access, and showers and bathrooms that are either private or shared in the hallway. There are mushrooms that actually glow in the dark. The mushrooms, which are found in Brazil, are part of the genus Mycena, a group that includes about 500 species worldwide. Of these, only 33 are known to be bioluminescent. Their greenish glow is produced by a chemical reaction similar to that of fireflies and can attract insects that help disperse their spores, facilitating reproduction in humid and dark environments. Movie theaters were banned in Saudi Arabia for several decades starting in the 1980s. However, the ban was lifted in 2018 as part of social reforms, and since then, theaters have reopened throughout the country, marking an important change in its entertainment industry. The Swiss minigun C1 ST is the smallest fully functional revolver in the world. It measures only 2.2 inches long and weighs 0.7 ounces. According to biologist Dr. Sandra Gaut from the University of the Sorbonne in Paris, some frogs have developed ultrasonic mating calls that they can use to be heard over roaring water to find a mate. The Tokyo subway system transports 3,100,000,000 people per year. It is one of the most used transportation systems in the world and is known for its punctuality and efficiency. During peak hours, the trains can be extremely crowded, and there are staff members responsible for helping passengers board safely, maintaining constant flow in one of the most populated cities on the planet. The Tanbodhai Pagoda Temple in Myanmar contains more than 582,000 Buddhas. These images are arranged in rows and niches that cover almost all the surfaces of the temple, creating an impressive visual effect. The structure stands out for its bright colors and detailed design, making it one of the most striking religious sites in the country. There is a species of fungus named after SpongeBob. Spongiforma squarepantsii was named by researchers at San Francisco State University because it reminded them of the cartoon character. It has a sea sponge-like shape, large holes, and is orange in color. An elephant's tusks can weigh up to 200 pounds and grow up to 10 feet long. They are made of ivory and are actually elongated upper incisors that continue growing throughout the animal's life. They are used for digging, moving objects, defending themselves, and obtaining food, which explains why they often show wear depending on their use. To stay cool in high temperatures, kangaroos lick their arms until their fur and skin are soaked. The wind hitting their arms causes the saliva to evaporate and cool them down. The left lung is slightly smaller than our right lung because it shares the same space in our chest with our heart. For this reason, the left lung has 2 lobes instead of 3 like the right. This adaptation allows it to accommodate the heart without affecting respiratory function, maintaining an efficient balance within the thoracic cavity. The smallest snake species in the world is Leptotyphlops carli, which is found on the Caribbean island of Barbados. An average adult measures just under 4 inches long and is as thin as a strand of spaghetti. It lives underground and feeds mainly on ant and termite larvae, which makes it difficult to observe in the wild. Swedish woman Dagny Carlson became one of the oldest bloggers in the world. At 99 years old, she took a computer course and began writing online, gaining popularity for her direct style and sense of humor. She lived to be over 100 years old and remained active throughout much of her later life, publishing content and participating in media. She passed away in 2022 at 109 years old, leaving an inspiring legacy about learning and staying active in old age. There is an extremely rare congenital condition called polyorchidism, where a man is born with more than 2 testicles. In most documented cases, the additional testicle does not cause serious symptoms and is usually detected by chance during medical examinations. Even so, doctors typically monitor the condition to rule out possible complications and ensure normal development. The first drug law in the United States was enacted to prohibit Chinese opium dens. These regulations arose in the late 19th century in cities like San Francisco, partly driven by social concerns and also by prejudice toward immigrant communities. Over time, this type of measure evolved into broader substance control policies across the country. Presidential candidate Dwight D. Eisenhower was the first to use political advertisements on television. During his campaign in 1952, he created 40 television ads of 20 seconds where he answered questions from the audience. In August 2016, the first documented case of twin puppies was born by cesarean section at the Rue de Port Animal Hospital in Johannesburg, South Africa. The Logos Hope is the largest floating bookstore and library in the world. It is operated by a German charity organization that has more than 6,000 books. At the Hetaoping Research and Conservation Center for the Giant Panda in the Wolong Nature Reserve in China, researchers dressed as pandas to prepare panda cubs for their release into the wild. They used costumes to try to prevent the babies from becoming attached to humans. The planet Uranus has 27 moons. 5 of the moons are large, and the rest are much smaller. The 5 large moons are named Miranda, Ariel, Umbriel, Titania, and Oberon. Unlike other planets, many of its moons are named after characters from works by William Shakespeare and Alexander Pope, making them unique within the solar system. The little brown bat can consume up to 1,000 mosquitoes in an hour. This voracious appetite makes it a natural ally against pests, since in a single night, it can ingest a large number of flying insects, helping reduce mosquito populations in its environment without the need for pesticides. The average human bladder can hold up to 0.74 pints of liquid. However, the urge to urinate usually appears long before reaching that maximum capacity. In most people, the urge begins when the bladder is partially full, as nerves send signals to the brain to prevent overexpansion. This capacity can vary depending on age and hydration. According to researchers at the University of Aberdeen in Scotland, watching television series and marathons together can bring couples closer. The study found that if they lack mutual friends in the real world, the characters from the shows they watch together become a good substitute. The longest-serving crayon maker at Crayola, Emerson Moser, who worked at Crayola for 37 years, announced upon retiring that he was actually colorblind. During his career, he molded millions of crayons by hand, without distinguishing colors like most people, relying more on the process than on sight. In August 2016, 323 reindeer died from the impact of a single lightning strike in Hardangervidda National Park in Norway. They were clustered together due to a strong storm and died from the ground current that stopped all of their hearts. Australia's first police force was formed with the best-behaved convicts. These men, known as constables, were chosen for their good conduct within the penal colonies and were assigned surveillance and control duties. Over time, this system evolved into more formal police forces as cities grew and more organized legal structures were established in the country. Greenland is the largest island in the world. It has an area of 822,700 square miles. Despite its size, much of its surface is covered by a massive ice sheet that reaches miles in thickness. Its population is relatively small and is concentrated along the coast, where conditions are more habitable and life depends largely on the sea. During the 2007 writers' strike, David Letterman paid the staff of Late Show out of his own pocket. He did it to support his team while the program was paused due to the labor conflict. This decision was seen as an unusual gesture in the industry and earned him recognition from both his audience and other entertainment professionals. There is an animal called the wholphin, which is a cross between a false killer whale and a bottlenose dolphin. They are hybrids that are believed to live in the wild, but they have also been born in captivity. The most well-known case occurred in a marine park in Hawaii, where a specimen was born that showed characteristics of both species, such as intermediate size and a distinct set of teeth. The comb and wattles of chickens, which are the hanging pieces of red skin beneath their chins, actually help them stay cool. Blood circulates from the body to the comb and the wattles, where heat can transfer more easily to the air. The Titan beetle, known as Titanus gigas, is the largest beetle known in the Amazon rainforest and one of the largest insects in the world. It can grow up to 6.5 inches long. It has mandibles that can easily snap a pencil in half. Despite its size, adults rarely feed and live for a short time, while their larvae spend years hidden inside decaying wood before emerging. Currently, more than 300 moons are known in the solar system, as new satellites continue to be discovered around giant planets like Saturn and Jupiter. Most are small, irregular bodies captured by the gravity of these planets, and many receive names inspired by mythology. These findings are made possible thanks to advanced telescopes and space missions that continue to expand our knowledge of the solar system. There are small holes or pores in chicken eggs and in those of other birds that allow the chicks to breathe oxygen and release carbon dioxide. A chicken egg has more than 7,000 pores. These pores also regulate internal humidity and help prevent the buildup of bacteria, while a thin protective layer on the shell controls gas exchange without compromising the safety of the embryo during its development. According to a survey conducted by researchers at Boston University, underage drinkers who consume alcohol-infused gelatin are more likely to engage in fights after drinking alcohol, although they admit that more research is needed on this topic. Balut is a national delicacy in the Philippines. It is a fertilized duck egg, or duck embryo, that is boiled and eaten directly from the shell. It is usually consumed hot, accompanied by salt, vinegar, or spices, and it is common to find it at street stalls at night. For many, it is an accessible source of protein and part of culinary traditions passed down through generations. More than 1,000 elephants were used to transport the materials needed to build the Taj Mahal. These animals were key in moving enormous blocks of marble and other heavy stones over long distances. Construction began in 1632 and took more than 20 years to complete, involving thousands of artisans and workers from different regions. In fact, it snowed in the Sahara Desert in 1979 and 2012. These events occurred in elevated areas such as Algeria, where temperatures can drop enough in winter, and although the snow usually lasts a short time, in some cases it has covered dunes, creating very unusual landscapes in the region. The needlefish has greenish-blue bones. The color is caused by a pigment called biliverdin. This same compound also appears in the bodies of other animals as a result of the breakdown of hemoglobin. Despite their unusual color, the bones do not pose any risk for human consumption, and in some regions, this fish is appreciated as food. Sea scallops have about 60 eyes. They can be a bright blue color and help the scallop detect light, darkness, and movement. These small eyes are lined along the edge of their shell and function like tiny mirrors that reflect light to form images. Thanks to this, they can react quickly to predators by swimming with rapid opening and closing movements of their shells. Thurl Ravenscroft, who was the voice of Tony the Tiger for Kellogg's, was also the man who sang "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch" in the original special of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The Pope has his own vehicle that he uses in his public appearances called the Pope-mobile. You probably already knew that, but what you might not know is that it has bulletproof glass surrounding it, as well as a handrail for him to hold onto while he stands and greets the crowd in order to get in and out. It is designed to protect him while still allowing him to be visible to the crowds. Flying squirrels cannot actually fly, but they can glide through the air for distances of up to 295 feet. They achieve this thanks to a membrane of skin called the patagium that stretches between their limbs. In addition, they use their tail as a rudder to change direction and control their landing, which allows them to move between trees without going down to the ground. In 1974, Gerber Baby Products attempted to market Gerber Singles, which were jarred meals such as creamed beef and beef burgundy. The marketing was aimed at college students and young adults, but believe it or not, the product failed. There is a museum in Chichibu, Japan called Shinsekikan, which means Hall of Curious Rocks, that has nearly 2,000 rocks that resemble human faces. Most of these stones have not been modified, as they are valued precisely for their natural shapes. Many resemble human expressions or even familiar figures, which has made the place a unique attraction for curious visitors. The Nile crocodile rolls and squeezes its eggs in its mouth to help its young emerge. It does so with very controlled pressure, enough to break the shell without harming the babies, and then carefully transports them to the water, where it continues to protect them during their first days of life from possible predators. The toga could only be worn by free Roman citizens. Foreigners and exiled citizens were not allowed to appear in public wearing one. In addition, its use also reflected social status, since there were different types depending on a person's position, such as the toga praetexta for magistrates or the toga candida worn by those seeking public office, which is where the word candidate comes from. The Library of Congress is the largest library in the world. It has more than 162 million items, more than 838 miles of shelving, more than 38 million books and printed materials, 3.6 million recordings, 14 million photos, 5.5 million maps, 7.1 million pieces of sheet music, and 70 million manuscripts. There is a toilet made by Kohler called Numi that has a heated seat, foot warmers, lights, and Bluetooth technology. Who needs Bluetooth for a toilet? In addition, it allows you to play music, adjust the water temperature, and even customize ambient lighting, turning it into an experience closer to a spa than a regular bathroom. 28 grams, or a single ounce of gold, can be stretched into a wire about 56 miles long. This is due to the extremely high ductility of gold. In addition, it is also one of the most malleable metals, as it can be hammered into sheets so thin that they allow light to pass through. That is why it is used in electronics and in applications where very thin, conductive materials are required. There is an annual sidewalk egg frying contest on July 4th in Arizona. Contestants are given 15 minutes to fry 2 eggs using only solar energy. They can use mirrors, magnifying glasses, and aluminum to help speed up the process. There is an alarm clock called Sensor Wake that uses aromas of your choice to wake you up instead of sound. You can be awakened by smells such as freshly cut grass, warm croissant, chocolate, espresso, or mint. In Alaska, it is illegal to hunt a moose from an airplane. This practice, known as same-day airborne hunting, prohibits locating animals from the air and hunting them the same day to avoid unfair advantages and protect wildlife. The rule applies especially to species such as moose and seeks to maintain balance in sport hunting in remote areas of the state. When honey is swallowed, it reaches the bloodstream in just 20 minutes. This is because it is mainly composed of simple sugars such as glucose and fructose, which the body can absorb quickly. That is why it has been used for centuries as an immediate source of energy, especially by athletes or in situations where a quick boost is needed. On November 14, 1969, Apollo 12 was struck by lightning just 36 seconds after liftoff, and moments later, it was struck again. The second strike went through the spacecraft and disabled many of its electrical systems. One of the flight controllers remembered how to switch the spacecraft's signal conditioning equipment to auxiliary, and Apollo 12 was able to continue to successfully land on the moon. The replica of the ship used in the movie Pirates of the Caribbean, known as the Bounty, sank off the coast of North Carolina during Hurricane Sandy. The ship was a recreation of the original HMS Bounty and had participated in several film productions. During the storm in 2012, it was overwhelmed by the extreme sea conditions. The California condor is the largest flying bird in North America. Its wingspan can reach up to 10 feet from tip to tip, and it can fly at an altitude of 15,100 feet by catching air currents. This species was on the brink of extinction in the 1980s, when fewer than 30 individuals remained. But conservation programs have allowed its reintroduction into the wild in several areas of the western United States. The chewed stub of a cigar smoked by Sir Winston Churchill was sold at auction for £2,000 sterling. It was recovered from his ashtray by a nurse who cared for him while he was recovering from a hip fracture at Middlesex Hospital in 1962. During World War II, Germany used weapons that had a curved barrel device attached to the end of an MP-44 rifle, allowing soldiers to fire over obstacles without exposing themselves to return fire. Brian May, the guitarist of the band Queen, actually has a doctorate in astrophysics. After leaving his academic activities for 3 decades to become a rock star, he returned to school in 2007 to complete and receive his degree. In China, more than 10 million weddings are held each year. Couples typically spend an average of between $10,000 and $15,000 per event, depending on the city and economic level. The wedding industry in the country exceeds $200 billion, driven by urban growth, luxury, and new digital trends. The first email in history was sent in 1971 by computer engineer Ray Tomlinson. He sent messages to himself from one machine to another. He was also the one who chose the @ symbol to separate the user from the machine in email addresses, a convention that remains to this day. The content of the original message was not preserved, but it is believed to have been something simple and unimportant. When important Vikings died, they were placed in a funeral ship along with their clothes and jewelry, where they were buried or set on fire and pushed out to sea. These rituals symbolized the journey to the afterlife and the status of the deceased, and in some cases, they also included weapons, animals, and even servants. Archaeological findings in places such as Oseberg have revealed surprising details about these ceremonies and the life of the Viking elite. The Britannic, the sister ship of the Titanic, was sunk during the First World War. The Britannic was improved after the Titanic sank, but it still went down in just 55 minutes. Lake Bellandur in Bangalore, India, is so toxic that it is covered in foam and sometimes catches fire. The foam is the result of toxic water that contains a large amount of ammonia and phosphate, and very little dissolved oxygen due to decades of untreated chemical waste flowing into it. Because of the amount of grease, oil, and detergent in the foam, it often ignites. When a blue whale exhales, the spray that comes out of its blowhole can reach nearly 30 feet into the air. This spout is visible from a great distance and helps observers locate them in the ocean. In addition, the expulsion of air is so powerful that it can be heard from far away, since they release the air accumulated after diving for several minutes all at once. The Komodo dragon is the national animal of Indonesia. This enormous reptile, known scientifically as Varanus komodoensis, can reach several meters in length and has a bite with bacteria and toxins that weaken its prey. It mainly inhabits islands such as Komodo and Rinca, where it is a protected species and one of the country's main natural attractions. When Mick Jagger was a teenager, he bit the tip of his tongue after colliding with another player during a basketball game. From that moment on, he spoke and sang with a less refined and more street-like accent. Owls cannot roll or move their eyes, so they have to turn their heads to look to the sides. Their eyes are fixed in their sockets, but their neck is extremely flexible, which allows them to rotate their head up to about 270 degrees without cutting off blood flow, thanks to special adaptations in their blood vessels. There are adventure parks in England called Diggerland, where you can drive and operate real tractors, dump trucks, and other full-size construction machinery. There were 12 confirmed dogs on the RMS Titanic. Unfortunately, only 3 of them survived. Most belonged to first-class passengers and traveled in special areas of the ship. Some owners tried to save them during the evacuation, and those that survived did so because they were small enough to be carried into lifeboats without being noticed. According to the American Kennel Club, the Labrador Retriever has been the most popular dog in the United States for the last 25 consecutive years. Its popularity is largely due to its friendly temperament, intelligence, and ease of training, making it one of the favorite breeds for both families and service and rescue work. In 2011, Tom Piercy, a farmer from York, England, created a maze by carving 2 portraits of Harry Potter the size of a football field into a cornfield. The design was created using GPS technology to achieve the details, and the site became a temporary tourist attraction that drew thousands of visitors during the summer season. There is a swimming pool suspended between 2 apartment buildings in London, England. It is transparent on the sides and the bottom. You can swim from one building to the other while enjoying a view of London through a lining of nearly 8 inches of glass. The structure is made of high-strength acrylic and is located more than 100 feet above the ground. It opened in recent years as part of a luxury residential complex and quickly became a striking attraction for its unique design. The microwave oven was invented by accident in 1945. Engineer Percy Spencer was working in a laboratory testing magnetrons. One day, while working near magnetrons that produced microwaves, he noticed that a chocolate bar in his pocket was melting. That is how the microwave oven was born. 7-Up was originally called Bib Label Lithiated Lemon Lime Soda. It was invented in 1929 by Charles Leeper Grigg, who included lithia in it, a natural substance found in minimal amounts in sparkling waters fed by underground springs. Lithia is better known as lithium, a drug used to stabilize mood changes. There are numbers on the light posts in Central Park in New York City to help people navigate if they get lost. The first 2 or 3 numbers indicate the nearest cross street, and the last number indicates which side of the city you are closer to. If it is an odd number, it means you are on the west side, and if you have an even number, it means you are on the east. Computer scientists and electrical engineers at the University of Washington have devised a way to send secure passwords through the human body instead of through the air. They use benign, low-frequency transmissions generated by fingerprint sensors and touch panels on devices. Australian truck driver Bill Morgan had a nearly fatal accident when he was crushed in a truck crash and suffered a heart attack. But I say nearly fatal because he was clinically dead for more than 14 minutes. However, he survived after being in a coma for 12 days. His luck does not end there either. He also won the lottery twice. With the first winning scratch ticket, he won a car valued at $17,000, and during a recreation for a Melbourne television program, he bought another ticket and won a jackpot of $170,000. The peregrine falcon can dive onto its prey from above at speeds of up to 199 miles per hour. During this descent, called a stoop, it adjusts the shape of its wings and body to reduce air resistance and increase speed. This behavior makes it the fastest animal in the world, surpassing even many moving vehicles. According to a survey conducted by Pew Research in 2016 of 1,520 adults living in the 50 states and the District of Columbia, just over 1 in 4 people did not read a single book in the last 12 months. In Alabama, it is illegal to wrestle a bear. This law was created to ban cruel shows that were popular in the past, where wild animals were used for entertainment. Although it may sound absurd today, this type of rule remains in legal codes as a reminder of old practices that were eventually considered unacceptable and banned for animal welfare reasons. Jellyfish eat and defecate through the same opening. This opening functions as both mouth and anus at the same time, connected to an internal cavity where digestion occurs. Since they do not have a complete digestive system like other animals, they process food in a simpler way and expel waste through the same place, which is common in primitive marine organisms. In 2012, Costa Rica passed a historic law that banned sport hunting, becoming one of the first countries in Latin America to take this measure. The regulation establishes penalties for those who violate it, including prison sentences and financial fines. The White House has its own pastry kitchen. A specialized team works there preparing desserts for official events, state dinners, and celebrations. Each menu is adapted to the guests and the occasion, and many desserts are designed with personalized details. In addition, the residence has several kitchens in total, which allows it to handle everything from small meetings to large receptions with hundreds of people. Angel Falls in Venezuela was accidentally discovered in 1935 by Jimmy Angel, a bush pilot who was searching for gold and diamonds. That is where it got its name. In reality, the waterfall was already known by the indigenous Pemon people, who called it Querepacupay Vena. But it was Angel who brought it to the world's attention after flying over it during an expedition in the Gran Sabana. There is a building near Newark, Ohio, shaped like a picnic basket. It was built by Dave Longaberger, owner of the Longaberger Basket Company, in 1997 to be used as its headquarters. There is a tradition in High Wycombe, United Kingdom, where the mayor is weighed in public to see whether he has been gaining weight at the expense of taxpayers or not. The tradition dates back to medieval times. The United States has had 2 presidents who were peanut farmers, Thomas Jefferson and Jimmy Carter. Alaska has its own version of Groundhog Day, called Marmot Day. This is because Alaska does not have groundhogs. Instead, they celebrate local marmots as a symbol of the change of season, and the holiday coincides with the same day as Groundhog Day. The pagoda in Japan is the oldest wooden building in the world. It was built using trees from the year 600 after Christ. Many of these structures, such as the one at Horyuji Temple, have withstood earthquakes thanks to their flexible design with a central pillar that absorbs vibrations. The wood of Japanese cypress, known for its resistance over time, also helps preserve them standing after more than 1,300 years. In Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, Darth Vader only appears on screen for a total of 12 minutes. Musician Frank Zappa had a quilt made entirely out of unwashed underwear that women threw onto the stage during his concerts. In 2014, a parking space in London was sold for £400,000. That was 2.5 times the cost of the average home in the United Kingdom. The term Mayday is used internationally as a distress signal. It was derived from the French Venez m'aider, which means come help me. It was adopted in the 1920s to facilitate communication by radio in emergencies, especially in aviation and navigation, as it sounds clear and is easy to understand in different languages. In addition, it is repeated 3 times in a row to avoid confusion in critical situations. The Goliath frog is the largest frog in the world. It can reach up to 12.5 inches in length and weigh 7.2 pounds. It lives in fast-flowing rivers in western and central Africa, and it is known for its strength, as it can move stones to create shelters where it lays its eggs. The Grand Hyatt Cannes Martinez Hotel has a team of falcons that have been trained to scare away seagulls that get too close to its diners. These falcons patrol the area regularly and, with their mere presence, keep opportunistic birds away without harming them. It is a natural control technique that is also used in airports and other coastal areas to reduce risks and nuisances. According to a memo from a major franchisee, only 1 in 5 millennials, those between the ages of 18 and 34, has ever tried a Big Mac. In 2002, Sesame Workshop created an HIV-positive character to be part of the cast of the South African co-production of Sesame Street. The Muppet was designed to promote tolerance and reduce the stigma associated with being HIV positive. She was a 5-year-old girl who contracted the disease through a contaminated blood transfusion. Dolphins actually have two stomachs, one to store food and the other to digest it. This system allows them to swallow their prey quickly without chewing and process it later more efficiently, something useful in the open ocean where they may need to capture several fish in a short time before they escape. The rare Japanese autumn frog carries a hidden weapon. They have retractable claws that can emerge from their thumbs. They use these claws like blades to fight and mate. These structures are not true nails, but bony extensions that pierce through the skin when needed. A similar mechanism has also been observed in some African frogs, making them one of the few amphibians with this type of defense. There is a fully functional 18-karat gold toilet called America at the Guggenheim Museum. It was created by the Italian artist Maurizio Cattelan. It is installed in one of the museum's small single-occupancy restrooms, and visitors are encouraged to use it. Dinosaur fossils have been found on all of the world's main continents. They have been discovered in Antarctica, Australia, and India, and in the far north of Canada. This is because millions of years ago, the continents were joined in the supercontinent Pangaea, which allowed dinosaurs to spread before the landmasses separated. On May 31, 2014, according to Guinness World Records, 104 volunteers at the Deer Run camping resort in Gardners, Pennsylvania, made the largest S-more in history. It weighed an astonishing 267 pounds. The nest of the swiftlet is made from the bird's own saliva. In Asian countries, bird's nest is boiled into a soup and considered a delicacy. A single bowl of bird's nest soup can cost around $100. That is a lot of money for bird saliva. The only known albino gorilla to have lived was Snowflake. He was born in the wild but was captured in 1966 by villagers and lived at the Barcelona Zoo. He died of skin cancer in 2003, and according to Spanish researchers, Snowflake was the result of inbreeding between possibly an uncle and a niece. St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican is the largest cathedral in the world. It is 610 feet long, has an interior area of more than 163,000 square feet, and the main dome is 446 feet tall. It can accommodate 20,000 people in prayer at once. The Great Barrier Reef is the largest living structure on Earth. It spans more than 1,243 miles of islands and submerged reefs. It is located between the coast of Queensland and the western edge of the Pacific Ocean. The longest recorded flight of a chicken is 13 seconds. Although they are not built for long-distance flight, they can propel themselves forcefully to escape predators or reach elevated places. Their short wings and heavy bodies limit how long they can stay in the air, so they usually perform brief flights, more similar to extended jumps than sustained flight. The word laser is an acronym that stands for Light Amplification by Stimulated Emission of Radiation. It comes from the English phrase light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation and began to be used in the mid-20th century after the development of this technology. Today, lasers have applications in medicine, communications, industry, and even in code readers, thanks to their ability to emit coherent and highly precise light. The United Kingdom is the only country that does not include its name on its stamps, but all United Kingdom stamps feature an image of the monarch's head. This practice dates back to the first stamp in the world, the penny black, issued in 1840, which showed Queen Victoria. Since then, the tradition has been maintained as a sign of origin without needing to include the country's name. In ancient Egypt, people were paid for their services in bread and beer. They were also paid with rations of grain, meat, and cloth, which were considered the necessities of life. But bread and beer were the most basic elements of the Egyptian diet. Billy Mitchell was recognized for years as the first person to achieve a perfect score in Pac-Man of 3,333,360 points, reached on July 3, 1999, at the FunSpot Family Fun Center. He also achieved notable records in games such as Ms. Pac-Man, Donkey Kong Jr., Centipede, and Burger Time. However, years later, controversies arose over some of his records, especially in Donkey Kong, which led to investigations and the temporary removal of certain records by scorekeeping organizations. In the world of insects, there are curious behaviors related to reproduction. In some species, such as the praying mantis, the female may feed on the male after mating. That is why males remain still to avoid being eaten. In 1996, Kermit the Frog delivered the commencement speech at Southampton College to 245 graduates. The character, performed by Jim Henson, appeared as a special guest and offered an inspiring message in his characteristic style. In 2013, Navy veteran Lonnie Bedwell became the first completely blind kayaker to paddle the entire length of the Grand Canyon, 364 miles, in a solo kayak. It took him 16 days. Gene Simmons from Kiss was born on August 25, 1949 in Haifa, Israel, as Chaim Witz. He emigrated to the United States as a child and adopted his stage name when he began his musical career. In addition to being a bassist and singer, he is known for his distinctive stage image and for helping turn Kiss into one of the most recognized bands in rock. The opossum is immune to bee stings, scorpion stings, rattlesnake venom, and toxins such as botulism. This is due to special proteins in its blood that can neutralize certain toxins, which has sparked scientific interest in developing possible antidotes. In addition, they rarely contract rabies, partly because their body temperature is lower than that of other mammals, which makes it harder for the virus to survive. A skunk can spray a victim from up to 10 feet away, so if you smell it, run. Its spray contains extremely persistent sulfur compounds that can permeate clothing and surfaces for days. In addition, before spraying, they usually give warning signals such as stomping the ground with their feet or raising their tail, which gives an opportunity to move away in time. There is a beaver dam located in Wood Buffalo National Park in northern Alberta, Canada, that is so large it can be seen from outer space. It stretches for 2,789 feet. This structure has been built and expanded by generations of beavers over decades, forming a complex system of channels and ponds that modifies the landscape in an impressive way. In fact, you can buy a child-sized Tesla for your kids for just under $500. It was created not to make money, but as a marketing tactic. Instead of spending money on ads, they manufacture these cars, people buy them, and advertise for them by sharing photos on social media of how cool their kids are. St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland, was not actually Irish. His exact place and date of birth are unknown. However, it is believed that he was born around the year 375 in Scotland, and that his real name was Maewyn Succat, and he took the name Patrick upon becoming a priest. A man named Mbagoto from Indonesia claims to be 146 years old, and there is a photo of his government identification card to prove it. The card shows his date of birth as December 31st, 1870. He has outlived his 10 siblings, 4 wives, and his children. The breeding of orcas in captivity is banned in the state of California. In addition, restrictions were established so that these animals are no longer used in shows purely for entertainment purposes, marking an important shift in how marine mammals are managed in aquatic parks. These measures arose after intense public debate about animal welfare and the impact of captivity on species such as the orca. Kangaroos cannot move backward. The combination of their muscular legs, large feet, and tails can help kangaroos move forward and jump effectively, but these appendages also prevent them from going in reverse. Their tail acts as a powerful support for balance and even propulsion, and together with their hind legs, forms a structure designed almost exclusively for forward movement, making them excellent jumpers in open terrain. Actress Jamie Lee Curtis invented a diaper that is equipped with a waterproof compartment for wet wipes. She spent a lot of time caring for children, which means she spent many hours changing diapers. So it is not surprising that this active mother thought the conventional diaper system needed some adjustments. Yes, traditional diapers are quite bad. In Fairbanks, Alaska, the northern lights can be seen an average of 240 nights per year. On those nights, the sky lights up with colors ranging from yellows and greens to reds, purples, and blues. This phenomenon occurs when particles from the solar wind interact with the Earth's atmosphere, and the region has become one of the most popular destinations in the world to observe this natural spectacle. Former President Richard Nixon gave up his Secret Service bodyguards 11 years after leaving office to save the government money. The estimated cost savings was $3 million. This decision was unusual, since lifetime protection for former presidents is a standard measure in the United States. Even so, he later received official protection again during certain events for security reasons. Naked mole rats are rodents but live like many insects. They live in colonies and are led by a queen or dominant rat. The queen is the only female that reproduces and has offspring. The rest act as workers or soldiers, taking care of digging tunnels, searching for food, and protecting the group. This social organization is very rare among mammals and more closely resembles that of ants or bees, which makes them especially interesting for scientific research. The Lithuanian town of Ramigala holds an annual beauty contest where the contestants are goats. Around 500 people brave the summer heat to attend the parade in honor of the goat, a traditional symbol of the northern town. The state of Maine was historically known as the toothpick capital of the world. During the 19th century and much of the 20th century, it produced the vast majority of wooden toothpicks in the United States, thanks to the abundance of birch trees in the region. However, over time the industry declined considerably due to international competition and changes in production. On June 1st, 1923, Canada passed the Chinese Exclusion Act, which effectively stopped Chinese immigration to Canada for nearly a quarter of a century. It remained in effect until 1947. The line that separates the top and bottom numbers of a fraction is called the fraction bar. In mathematics, it is also known as a vinculum or division line, since it indicates that the top number must be divided by the bottom number. This notation has been used for centuries and allows for the clear representation of relationships between quantities, from basic operations to more complex expressions in algebra. There are 150 billion red blood cells in 1 ounce of blood. There are 2.4 trillion red blood cells in a pint of blood, and under stress, the human body can produce 119 million red blood cells per second. These are generated in the bone marrow and have a lifespan of approximately 120 days before being replaced, maintaining the body's ability to transport oxygen. In the Victorian era, police officers were called mutton shunters. I am not sure if that is a more offensive or less offensive term than pig. The human small intestine is 20 feet long and about 1 inch in diameter. Despite its name, it is the longest organ in the digestive system and is folded inside the abdomen to take up less space. Its inner surface is covered with millions of villi that greatly increase the area for nutrient absorption, allowing the body to make the most of the food we consume. There is a pipeline beneath the cobblestone streets of the city of Bruges in Belgium that can pump 1,057 gallons of alcohol per hour, or the equivalent of 12,000 bottles. It runs 1,864 miles from a brewery in central Bruges to a bottling plant on the outskirts of the city. The state of Alaska has more than 3 million lakes. In fact, more than 86,000 square miles of Alaska are covered by water. This enormous amount is due to glacial activity, which over thousands of years shaped the land by creating depressions that later filled with water. In addition to rivers, wetlands, and extensive coastlines that form one of the most water-rich landscapes on the planet. Up to the present, the Broadway show The Phantom of the Opera became the longest-running musical in Broadway history. Since its premiere in 1988, it accumulated more than 13,000 performances before officially closing in 2023, establishing itself as the longest-running production to ever grace the stages of New York. In 2009, Bill Gates released mosquitoes in front of an audience that was there to hear him speak about education and the eradication of malaria. Malaria is transmitted from person to person through mosquito bites. The United States Capitol subway system in Washington is an exclusive transit system used only by members of Congress and Capitol staff. This small train connects several government buildings and allows quick movement between them without going outside. It has operated since the early 20th century and has been expanded over time to adapt to the growth of the legislative complex. The first garbage disposal was invented by architect John W. Hammis in 1927. He wanted to make kitchen cleanup easier for his wife. What a great guy. His invention led to the creation of the company Incinerator, which began marketing the product years later, and over time it became a common appliance in many modern kitchens. The albatross can actually sleep while flying. They do this to avoid predators such as whales and sharks. They also take advantage of air currents to stay gliding with very little effort, which allows them to travel enormous distances over the ocean. They can go days without touching land and alternate moments of rest while continuing in motion, which is key to their life in the open sea. Charles Darwin and Abraham Lincoln were born on the same day and year, February 12, 1809. Not only that, but they both loved Shakespeare, both lost their mothers at an early age, and both were abolitionists. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, the smallest adult of all time is Chandra Bahadur Dangi of Nepal. He measured only 1.79 feet tall. In 2016, The Edril family from Turkey suffered food poisoning from eating food that had been prepared to celebrate being discharged from the hospital for, you guessed it, food poisoning. A year on the planet Mercury lasts 88 Earth days. This is because it is the closest planet to the Sun and orbits at high speed. Interestingly, a day on Mercury, meaning the time it takes to rotate on its axis, is much longer than its year, which causes extreme cycles of heat and cold on its surface. The longest recorded engagement lasted 67 years. Octavio Guillén and Adriana Martinez, both 82 years old, finally got married in June 1969 in Mexico City. What were they waiting for? If you have an irrational fear of being near, among, or in the company of teenagers, you have what is called ephebiphobia. This term is used to describe an intense aversion toward young people, and although it is not always classified as a formal clinical disorder, it can influence social behavior and the negative perception of youth in different cultural contexts. Phobophobia is the abnormal fear of developing a phobia, or the anxiety of showing symptoms of a phobia. This term is used in psychology to describe a cycle in which a person fears their own fear reactions, which can intensify anxiety over time. It is usually related to anxiety disorders and panic attacks, where the anticipation of fear becomes as intense as the fear itself. Antonio López de Santa Anna was president of Mexico 11 times between 1833 and 1855. During that period, he held office intermittently, as he entered and left power amid constant political and military conflicts. He was a very influential figure in the country's history, participating in key events such as the loss of Texas and other territorial disputes. In the 1940s, there was a television remote control that was connected to the device with a 20-foot cable. One of the first commercial models was developed by Zenith Electronics and was known as Lazy Bones, allowing users to change channels without getting up, although the cable was inconvenient and prone to tangling, which led to the creation of wireless versions a few years later. Andorra, Finland, Greenland, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, and Norway have literacy rates of nearly 100%. This is because their governments legally require that every young child must comply with mandatory attendance within their school systems. In addition, some provide free education up to the secondary level, and along with a higher percentage of their gross domestic product allocated to the education sector, this has resulted in very high literacy rates. Olympus Mons, located on Mars, is the largest volcano and mountain in the solar system. It is more than 16 miles high, which is 3 times the height of Mount Everest. Its enormous size is due to the low Martian gravity and the absence of tectonic plates, which allowed lava to accumulate for millions of years without shifting. In 2014, a massive underground city was discovered in the Cappadocia region of Turkey. It is the size of 65 soccer fields and housed around 20,000 people. It contained everything from churches, water channels, and fountains to kitchens and even wineries and oil presses. The Nazis had a plan to kill Sir Winston Churchill with an explosive chocolate bar during World War II. Hitler's bomb makers coated explosive devices with a thin layer of dark chocolate and packaged them in expensive-looking black and gold wrapping. But fortunately, the plan was foiled by British spies. BACA, or Bikers Against Child Abuse International, is a group of motorcyclists who escort children to therapy sessions or to school to help them feel safer and supported. They even attend court cases where victims must testify. David the Bulletsmith, who appeared on the 7th season of America's Got Talent, has been fired from a cannon more than 5,000 times. He is the highest-flying human cannonball in the world today, with his launches setting world records. Prince Charles is actually a descendant of Vlad the Impaler, the cruel Romanian warlord of the 15th century who helped inspire Bram Stoker's vampire novel of 1897, Dracula. This connection comes from ancient European noble lines, and the monarch himself has shown interest in Romania, frequently visiting the Transylvania region, historically associated with the figure of Vlad. According to a study published in the journal Science, the sleep patterns of lizards are the same as those of humans. Electrodes were placed in the brains of 5 bearded dragons while they slept, and they showed evidence that lizards go through slow-wave sleep, sharp waves, low-amplitude waves, and rapid eye movement, or REM. Black garlic-flavored Doritos were released in Japan as a special Halloween edition. This peculiar product stood out for its themed packaging, with a black bag decorated with a haunted house, bats, and the image of Dracula. Supermodel Tyra Banks was the first African-American woman to appear on the cover of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue in 1997. The distance from Mars to the Sun is 128,437,425 miles at its closest point, and 154,845,701 miles at its farthest point. In Japan, May 9th is officially recognized by the Japan Anniversary Association as Goku Day. May because in Japanese the number 5 is pronounced go, and the number 9 is pronounced ku. In 1871, under his original name Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain invented and received a patent for the elastic strap for bra suspenders. His patent stated, and I quote, "The nature of my invention consists of an adjustable and detachable elastic strap for vests, trousers, or other garments that require straps, as will be described in more detail below." Pistachios used to be dyed with red food coloring to hide imperfections in the shell caused by their processing. It was the same dye that enhanced the appearance of cakes and decorations, but it did not last long. Contact with moisture transferred the dye from the nut to people's mouths, and they did not like that. During the Vietnam War, United States fighter jets dropped their external fuel tanks over Vietnam when they were empty or if the pilot needed more maneuverability. Vietnamese farmers then reused them and used them as canoes. The letters M in M&M's chocolates represent the last names of the candy's founders, Mars and Murray. The same goes for the Mars bar, although it was not originally named after its creator, Frank Mars, but after his son, Forrest Mars. Landscape Arch in Arches National Park, Utah, has the longest span of natural rock in the world, with a length of 290 feet. It is surprisingly thin in some sections, and in recent decades, it has lost fragments of rock, which has increased concern about its stability and has led to restricting access beneath the arch to protect visitors. Lions and jaguars react to catnip in almost the same way as domestic cats, by sniffing, licking, and rubbing their chins and bodies on the object it was sprayed on. This response is related to a compound called nepentolactone, which stimulates specific sensory receptors. Not all felines react, but in those that do, the effect can last several minutes before they temporarily lose sensitivity to this stimulus. India has 23 official languages. Although Hindi is the official language of the central government in India, with English as a provisional subsidiary official language, individual state legislatures are free to adopt any regional language as the official language of that state. The dark gray color that eyes see in perfect darkness is the result of signals from the optic nerves and is called Eigenkau. This shade does not come from external light, but from the internal activity of the visual system when there are no stimuli. That is why, even with your eyes closed in complete darkness, you do not perceive absolute black, but that faint characteristic gray. The first Ferris wheel was invented in 1893 for the Chicago World's Fair by George W. Ferris. It was 260 feet tall, cost 50 cents per ride, and could carry 60 passengers in each of the 36 cars. That is a total capacity of 2,160 passengers. The underside of a horse's hoof is called the frog. It has a triangular shape and acts as a natural shock absorber that helps distribute weight and absorb impact when walking or running. In addition, when it comes into contact with the ground, it promotes blood circulation within the hoof, which is essential for keeping it healthy and strong over time. Adult rats can fit through a hole as small as a quarter, or through a space less than 1 inch wide. This is how rats can infest your home without you knowing it. Their skeletons are very flexible, and they only need their head to fit through for the rest of their body to pass. In addition, their incisors grow continuously, so they gnaw on wood, plastic, and even soft metals to open new access points and move around easily. It is actually possible for rabbits to die of fright. Loud sounds, such as barking dogs, loud music, or shouting, can trigger a heart attack and put a rabbit into shock, causing sudden death. This is because they are extremely sensitive animals to stress, with a cardiovascular system that can react intensely to sudden threats, even in domestic environments. Gladiators were, for the most part, vegetarians. Their diets consisted of barley and vegetables. This allowed them to gain weight to protect themselves during fights and make them appear more spectacular to the crowd. In ancient Rome, they were known as barley eaters, and they also consumed drinks rich in plant ash to recover minerals after combat, something similar to a rudimentary supplement to strengthen their bones. There is an animal that has a stronger smell than a skunk. The tamandua, or lesser anteater, releases a pungent odor that is between 4 and 7 times stronger than that of a skunk. In fact, you can smell it from up to 164 feet away. It uses this odor as a defense when it feels threatened, as when it stands up and shows its claws, it also releases that strong secretion. It is also an expert climber and spends much of its time in trees searching for ants and termites. The largest meteorite and the largest piece of iron ever found is the Hoba meteorite. It was discovered in 1920 in Namibia by a farmer who was plowing his field. The meteorite weighs 66 tons and measures 8.9 feet long, 8.9 feet wide, and about 3 feet thick. Experts estimate that it fell to Earth about 80,000 years ago. It is actually possible to get hair splinters, just like wooden ones. In fact, they are very common among dog groomers and hairstylists. This happens because cut hairs can become stiff and sharp, especially when they are dry. They often embed in fingers or exposed skin and can cause discomfort or infections if not removed in time, which is why many professionals use protection. 5,500 confirmed exoplanets have been discovered by telescope. Most have been detected by missions such as Kepler and TESS, using the transit method, where the slight dimming of a star's light is observed when a planet passes in front of it. Some of these worlds are inhabitable zones and present characteristics as diverse as gas giants or rocky planets similar to Earth. Orcas, also known as killer whales, are actually dolphins. In fact, they are the largest members of the dolphin family. They live in very close family groups called pods, and each group has its own dialect of sounds. They are highly intelligent predators that hunt in teams and can feed on fish, seals, and even sharks, using coordinated strategies that vary depending on the region where they live. Bees in Ribeauville, France, began producing honey in different shades of blue and green. When beekeepers investigated, they discovered that instead of collecting nectar from flowers, the bees were feeding on leftover colored M&M candy shells that were being processed by a plant 1.55 miles away. It is possible that some people with brain disorders suffer from something called Witzelsucht, a German term that means addiction to jokes. Those affected have a compulsion to tell jokes constantly. This behavior has been linked to damage in certain areas of the brain, especially in the frontal lobe, which influence impulse control and language, which can lead to inappropriate or out-of-context jokes. Blue jays and cardinals go bald in late summer and in the fall. They usually lose all their feathers and replace them gradually when they molt. But sometimes they lose them all at once, creating a bald head. However, they are only bald for about 1 week, and their feathers grow back. President James A. Garfield served as president for less than 4 months before being assassinated. However, interestingly, the gunshot to his back was not what killed him, as it did not hit any of his vital organs. The bullet lodged behind his pancreas. In reality, his death was caused by infections brought on by unhygienic medical practices of the time, as several doctors attempted to remove the bullet without sterilizing their instruments or hands, worsening his condition over several weeks. Crocodiles can hold their breath underwater for up to 2 hours if necessary. The colder the water is, the longer they can remain submerged, because a cold crocodile uses less energy and oxygen than a warm one. In addition, they can significantly slow their heart rate and redirect blood flow to vital organs, which allows them to remain motionless for long periods while stalking their prey without being detected. Elvis Presley had a chimpanzee named Scatter. It is a little-known fact that the king had a great love for animals. In fact, Elvis had countless pets throughout his life, including dogs, horses, birds, and more. There used to be a fifth suit of playing cards called the Eagle in the United States. These cards were green with an eagle on them instead of red or black. In England, they were blue with a royal crown symbol. Originally, they were intended to be used in the game of bridge, and they were part of an experimental deck created in the early 20th century to add greater strategic complexity, although it never became popular and remained a little-known curiosity. In the United States presidential election of 1948, the Chicago Daily Tribune mistakenly announced that Thomas Dewey had won the presidential race instead of Harry S. Truman. It marked the birth of fake news. The edition was released before the final results were confirmed due to tight printing deadlines. The famous photograph of Truman holding the incorrect newspaper became one of the most iconic political images of the 20th century. In Spain and France, the tooth mouse is a mouse known as la bonne petite souris. The little mouse will collect the teeth left under pillows, replacing them with cash or sweets. An estimated 46 million turkeys are eaten each Thanksgiving Day in the United States. This number makes the holiday one of the largest peaks of food consumption in the country. The tradition dates back centuries, and today is a central part of family gatherings, where turkey is usually prepared in different ways depending on the region and local customs. The Hunger Games is banned in Vietnam. The film was originally only delayed, but according to a member of the National Film Board of Vietnam, the board considers the film too violent and voted unanimously for it to be banned. In Sao Paulo, Brazil, there is a motel for dogs. The rooms are decorated with satin sheets, romantic music, and heart-shaped mirrors on the ceiling. You can rent a room for your playful canine for 2 hours for about $50. The full name of Pablo Picasso was, get ready for this, Pablo Diego José Francisco de Paula Juan Nepomuceno Crispín Crispiniano de la Santísima Trinidad Ruiz y Picasso. This long name follows the Spanish tradition of including multiple given names and family surnames, many of them with religious and saint references, something common in his time and that reflected both heritage and cultural devotion. There is a very rare condition known as distichiasis, where someone has 2 rows of eyelashes. They can actually be painful and must be removed. However, even through electrolysis, they are likely to grow back. The fin whale produces an average of 257 gallons of urine each day. That is a lot of urine. This enormous volume helps recycle nutrients in the ocean, especially iron, which supports the growth of phytoplankton. The species, known scientifically as Balanoptera physalis, is the second largest animal on the planet and plays a key role in the balance of marine ecosystems. According to the Guinness World Records, Verkhoyansk in Russia is the place with the greatest temperature range. Temperatures there vary from -90.4 degrees Fahrenheit to 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a range of 105 degrees. The hood ornament of a Rolls-Royce car is actually called the Spirit of Ecstasy. This figure was designed in the early 20th century and represents a woman leaning forward with her arms extended back like wings. Over time, it became an iconic symbol of luxury and elegance associated with the brand. The only underwater post office in the world is located at the Hideaway Island Resort and Marine Sanctuary in Port Vila, Vanuatu. Snorkelers and divers can send special waterproof postcards from 3.28 feet deep. Drinking too much water can be just as harmful to your health as not drinking enough. In fact, it can cause nausea and vomiting, headaches, and changes in your mental state, such as confusion or disorientation. This is known as overhydration and can lead to water intoxication. Actress Megan Fox suffers from papyrophobia, which is the fear of dry paper. She herself has mentioned in interviews that she avoids touching sheets of paper when they are completely dry, and usually moistens her fingers to turn pages. This type of specific phobia may seem unusual, but it is part of a wide variety of uncommon fears documented in psychology. The original Three Musketeers candy bar was invented in 1932 in the United States by Mars. It was originally packaged as 3 individual mini bars of chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry nougat, hence the name. The duck-billed platypus and the echidna are the only 2 mammals that lay eggs. Both belong to the group of monotremes, a very ancient branch of mammals that also produce milk, although they do not have nipples, since they secrete it through the skin to feed their young. In addition, the platypus has a venomous spur on its hind legs, something very rare among mammals. The fur that grows inside a cat's ears is called ear furnishings. These small hairs help prevent dust, dirt, and insects from entering the ear canal. They also help improve the perception of vibrations and sounds, which is key to their acute sense of hearing, especially when hunting or reacting to subtle movements in their environment. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in 68 children, or more specifically, 1 in 42 boys and 1 in 189 girls, has autism spectrum disorder, which includes a wide range of symptoms, abilities, and different levels of disability. A violin contains more than 70 separate pieces of wood. Each one is carefully assembled to influence the resonance and tone of the instrument. Woods such as spruce and maple are selected for their acoustic properties, and the construction process can take weeks or even months, as every detail affects the quality of the final sound. All NHL hockey pucks are frozen before the game because they slide more smoothly and quickly when frozen. A cold puck also bounces less and maintains its shape better, which helps make the game more controlled and predictable, even at high speeds on the ice. The first lyric of the Beatles' song Yesterday was scrambled eggs. Paul McCartney woke up one morning with the melody in his head, and to remember it until the lyrics could be written for the tune, he walked around the house humming, "Scrambled eggs, baby, I love scrambled eggs." Between 1347 and 1350, the bubonic plague, also known as the Black Death, killed 20 million people in Europe. That was 30% of the continent's population at that time. The name salamander comes from the Greek word for fire lizard. It originated when salamanders would run out of logs that had been thrown into the fire. This led to the ancient belief that they could resist or even live among flames. In reality, they simply lived in damp wood, and when it heated up, they quickly escaped, giving rise to that association with fire. People living in Estonia have been able to vote over the internet since 2005. The system, known as remote electronic voting, allows citizens to cast their vote from anywhere using secure digital identification. And it has become one of the most advanced examples of digital democracy, with increasing participation in national and local elections. The male giant peacock moth can detect female pheromones from miles away. It achieves this thanks to its feathery antennae, which are highly specialized to detect even minimal amounts of these substances in the air. This sensitivity allows it to orient itself and fly directly toward the female, even during the night, following a trail that is almost imperceptible to other animals. According to the World Health Organization, mental health problems have been a growing concern in different parts of the world over the past decades. For this reason, increasing importance is being placed on prevention, access to psychological support, and awareness, with the goal of helping people and improving their emotional well-being. The Great Red Spot of Jupiter is a massive storm that has been active for at least more than 150 years, although some studies suggest it could be much older. It is so large that for a long time it was wide enough to swallow the Earth, although in recent decades it has been shrinking. Microlattice is the lightest metal ever made. It is approximately 99.99% air and is so light that it can literally rest on a dandelion. It is made entirely of metal, but it is 100 times lighter than polystyrene. Sardine is a generic term used for various small fish that are sealed in cans or other containers. It does not refer to a single species, but to different types of fish, such as young herring or the European sardine. They are usually preserved in oil, water, or sauce, and are valued for their high content of nutrients, such as omega-3 fatty acids, calcium, and protein. France was one of the first countries to legislate against single-use plastics. A law that came into force in 2020 banned non-biodegradable plastic plates, cups, and utensils as part of the Energy Transition for Green Growth Act. This regulation also reinforced the previous ban on plastic bags in stores and markets, promoting the use of compostable materials and more sustainable solutions throughout the country. In 2005, an avid computer gamer from China with the nickname Snowly died of fatigue after playing World of Warcraft for 3 consecutive days. Incredibly, more than 100 players visited a virtual cathedral within the game where a service was held for her. She holds the Guinness World Record for the largest number of people at a virtual funeral. Australians are the largest consumers of meat in the world. They consume about 200 pounds per year, and the United States is right behind them, consuming just under that with 198 pounds per year. That is a lot of meat. Capri pants are named after the island of Capri in the Gulf of Naples, Italy. They became popular in the mid-20th century, especially in the 1950s, when European designers incorporated them into women's fashion. Actresses like Audrey Hepburn helped make them iconic, and since then, they have remained a versatile garment associated with a summery and relaxed style. According to a study published in the South African Journal of Science, traces of cannabis were detected in pipes that were found in William Shakespeare's garden. Scientists examined 24 pipes using advanced gas chromatography methods and found cannabis in 8 fragments, 4 of which were confirmed to have come from the bard's garden. It is a tradition in Denmark that if you are still single when you turn 25 years old, you get covered in cinnamon. If you reach 30 without getting married, the tradition continues, but instead of cinnamon, they sometimes use pepper. The Setere Mawe tribe initiates its boys at the age of 13 by making them wear gloves made of bullet ants for 10 minutes. They are repeatedly stung, which is incredibly painful, but they must not scream if they want to be declared men. Hockey pucks were originally made from cow dung. However, this material was not very practical as it would break down or fall apart easily during the game. Over time, they were replaced by wooden pucks and later by the vulcanized rubber ones used today, which offer greater durability and more consistent glide on the ice. The bowhead whale, which lives exclusively in the Arctic, has the thickest blubber of all whales. It can reach a thickness of 28 inches. This layer allows it to survive in extremely cold waters and also store enormous energy reserves, which contributes to its remarkable longevity, as some individuals have exceeded 200 years of age. On the island of Yakushima in Japan, macaque monkeys have been seen riding sika deer as if they were horses. This behavior has been documented by researchers and usually occurs in a playful or social way rather than out of necessity. In some cases, the macaques also take the opportunity to groom the deer while sitting on them, creating a curious interaction between the two species. On March 26, 1997, 39 members of the Heaven's Gate group made a collective decision based on their spiritual beliefs, as they thought their souls would be taken to a spacecraft following the Hale-Bopp comet. There is a muffin shop in San Francisco called Double or Muffin that will double your muffin order for free if you flip a coin and it lands on heads twice. Hurricane Patricia of 2015 is the strongest hurricane recorded in the Western Hemisphere. It had winds of up to 200 miles per hour. It reached that intensity in the Pacific Ocean near Mexico in a very short time, becoming an extreme case of rapid intensification before making landfall and quickly weakening upon encountering mountainous terrain. There is a museum of bad art in Boston. It is the only museum in the world dedicated to bad art in all its forms. It is called the Museum of Bad Art, and its collection includes works that are flawed in a curious way but sincere in their attempt. Many pieces are donated or rescued from garage sales, and the museum only accepts works that have something special, even if they do not meet traditional standards of art. Adventurer Bear Grylls named his children Jesse, Marmaduke, and Huckleberry. It is possible to earn a university degree in surfing. Some universities, especially in places with strong wave culture, offer related programs that combine practice with studies about the industry, the environment, and tourism. In countries like Australia, these courses include training in coastal management, water safety, and business aspects linked to surfing. There is a sauna in Norway that can hold 150 people. It is a large wooden structure located on a beach overlooking the Arctic Ocean. This type of coastal sauna is common in the northern part of the country, where the experience usually combines intense heat with cold water baths, a deeply rooted tradition that many consider revitalizing even in the middle of winter. Smelling isopropyl alcohol can help temporarily relieve nausea. This is due to the isopropyl in alcohol pads, which reduces nausea and vomiting after 3 or 4 deep breaths. This was discovered by nursing researchers at Shawnee Mission Medical Center in Kansas. Soap operas are called that because years ago, the programs were predominantly sponsored by soap companies. They were mainly broadcast during the day and were a way for advertisers to reach their main demographic group, which was housewives. The trombone was originally called sacabuche. The name comes from Old Spanish and refers to the movement of pulling out and pushing in the slide, which is the instrument's main characteristic. It was widely used during the Renaissance in the Baroque in Europe, especially in religious and court music, before adopting its modern name. The hashtag key on the keyboard is called an octathorpe. Hashtag or octathorpe are terms you will almost never use. Hashtag is better. In the Victorian era, some very young children worked as chimney sweeps since they could enter very narrow chimneys to clean them. It was a dangerous and difficult job that over time raised concern in society and led to changes in laws to better protect minors. You can tell a hard-boiled egg from a raw one simply by spinning it. If it spins easily, it is hard-boiled. If it wobbles, it is raw. Scientists discovered the earliest evidence of human footprints outside of Africa on the coast of Norfolk in eastern England. The footprints were found on the shores of Hapesburg and were more than 800,000 years old. Currently, 3 presidents of the United States have been impeached: Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump. None were convicted of the charges brought in the Senate. In the case of Donald Trump, he was impeached on 2 separate occasions, something unprecedented in the country's history, and in both cases, he was acquitted after the Senate trials. The trapjaw ant from Central and South Africa can snap its mandibles at a speed of up to 145 miles per hour. To put that into context, that is 23 times faster than a blink. After leaving school, Simon Cowell from Factor X and American Idol worked as a messenger on the set of the film The Shining. Writer and director Oliver Stone received a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star for his service in the Vietnam War. He served as an infantry soldier in active combat and was wounded on 2 occasions, experiences that later influenced several of his films, where he portrays war with a raw approach based on personal experiences. Elephants are known to prefer one tusk over the other, which causes one to be shorter than the other, similar to how humans are right-handed or left-handed. This behavior is noticeable because they use one more for digging, stripping bark, or manipulating objects. Over time, constant use wears down that tusk, while the other usually remains longer and less worn. Every year, London celebrates the Great British Duck Race, where people buy rubber ducks to help support various charities. The ducks race more than half a mile along the River Thames, and the first to cross the finish line wins a cash prize. In 2009, they set a world record for the largest plastic duck race with more than 205,000 ducks. The most expensive coffee in the world is Kopi Luwak. It is made from coffee beans that are partially digested and then defecated by a creature called a civet. The civet's digestive enzymes change the protein structure in the coffee beans, which removes some of the acidity. This produces a smoother cup of coffee made from feces. A cup of Kopi Luwak can cost up to $80. Breastfed babies defecate more than formula-fed babies because breast milk contains immunoglobulins, substances produced by the body's immune system that function as a natural laxative. The star of boxer Muhammad Ali on the Walk of Fame is on the wall, not on the pavement, because he did not want the name of Muhammad to be stepped on. Hawaiian Punch was originally developed as a topping for ice cream in 1934, and only later became the tropical fruit drink when consumers discovered how good it was as a beverage when mixed with water. October 2nd is Wrongful Conviction Day. It was launched by an advocacy organization for the wrongly convicted to raise awareness about people who have been found guilty of crimes they did not commit. In 1965, Mattel launched the Barbie Sleepover Party set. Apparently, one of its essential items for the party was a pink scale that was permanently set at 110 pounds. The set also included a small book with tips that suggested "do not eat," which generated criticism years later for promoting unrealistic body messages. Over time, the brand has tried to diversify its models to represent different body types. Approximately 1 in 8,500 people is born with something called situs inversus, which is when their organs in the chest and abdomen are in a perfect mirror image, reversed from their normal position. Their heart is on the right, and the liver and spleen are on the left. The White House, the Empire State Building, the Willis Tower, and Dodger Stadium are so large that they have their own zip codes. This makes it easier to manage the enormous volume of mail they receive daily, especially in office buildings and landmark locations that concentrate thousands of deliveries and visitors constantly. Makoto Igarashi from Tokyo developed the Hizamakura lap pillow, which is a cushion shaped like a woman's legs wearing a miniskirt, on which you can rest your head to experience maternal comfort. In the early days of the Indianapolis 500, most cars had 2 seats, one for the driver and one for the riding mechanic. The mechanic monitored gauges, made repairs, and sometimes even massaged the driver's arms and neck. The riding mechanic was mandatory from 1912 to 1922, and then again from 1930 to 1937. Singer Otis Redding whistled the final verse of the hit song "Sitting on the Dock of the Bay" because he did not have the lyrics written when it was recorded. He planned to complete the verse, but he died in a plane crash only 3 days after recording it before having the chance. But the producer decided to keep the whistling because he liked it. Grand Banks, Newfoundland, Canada is the foggiest place in the world, with 206 days of fog each year. This occurs due to the collision of the cold Labrador Current with the warm Gulf Stream, creating perfect conditions for dense fog banks that have complicated navigation for centuries and were a factor in numerous historical shipwrecks in the area. A baby echidna, or platypus, is called a puggle. These animals are monotremes, a very rare group of mammals that lay eggs instead of giving birth to live young. When they are born, puggles are extremely small and depend completely on their mother, feeding on milk that she secretes through her skin, since they do not have nipples like other mammals. The real name of Cookie Monster from Sesame Street is Sid. In fact, in 2010, Cookie Monster tweeted and said, "I was not born with the name Cookie Monster. It is just a nickname that stuck with me. I do not remember my real name. Maybe it was Sydney." More twins are born in Nigeria than anywhere else on Earth. In particular, the Yoruba region has some of the highest rates in the world, with communities where multiple births are relatively common. It is believed that genetic factors and the local diet, rich in certain tubers such as yams, may influence this high frequency. Scientists do not know why, but Caucasian people tend to go gray first, and redheads are the earliest of all. Asians are next most likely to go gray, followed by African Americans. Pope Francis released an album called Wake Up that features his speeches accompanied by rock, pop, and Gregorian chants. Baby hedgehogs are born with quills, but they are soft and flexible. At birth, these quills are covered by a layer of swollen skin that protects the mother during delivery. In the following hours, that layer reduces and the quills begin to harden gradually. Over time, they develop a second, firmer layer, which allows them to better defend themselves as they grow. John H. Jack Cover, one of the inventors of the taser, named it after his literary hero, Tom Swift. In fact, taser is an acronym for Thomas A. Swift's electric rifle. Cover only added the letter A to the name Tom Swift. Cheese-making artists at the Science Gallery in Dublin made cheese using bacteria from various artists and scientists that were collected with sterile cotton swabs from different parts of their bodies, including a belly button, a mouth, and even tears. The artist Grant Wood, who painted American Gothic, used his sister Nan and his dentist, Dr. Byron McKibbe, as his models. The house really exists in Eldon, Iowa. The older brother of actor Matthew McConaughey, Michael, known as Rooster, named his son Miller Lite after his favorite beer. The strongest and hardest substance in our bodies is not bone, it is tooth enamel. This is a good thing, because your tooth enamel has to withstand heat and cold, as well as biting hard substances. As the most mineralized substance in your body, tooth enamel is layer upon layer of minerals that protect the inner parts of your teeth from damage and decay. From 1956 to 1958, Chrysler offered a record player in its new cars called Highway Hi-Fi, but it did not last long because they had a tendency to break. The reason billiard tables are covered in green felt is because the original game of billiards was played on grass, outdoors. Then the game moved indoors, to a wooden table with green cloth to simulate grass. Over time, the material evolved into finer and more durable wool cloths that allow better ball movement. Even so, the green color remained as tradition, and today is an essential part of the game's aesthetic. There is a women's group called Gulabi Gang, or Pink Gang in India, that confronts abusers in the country. The group was founded in 2006 and is based in Badoza. It has the astonishing number of 400,000 members and helps bring abusers and corrupt police officers to justice. The women who join the group are registered, given a small identification card, and wear a distinctive uniform, a pink sari, and for 500 rupees per year, they also receive a stick to carry with them. There is a marathon at the North Pole every year, the coldest marathon in the world. It is 26.22 miles long, and runners have to wear thermal layers, windproof pants, and protective goggles due to the below-freezing temperature. The American author and therapist Ruth Westheimer, known as Dr. Ruth, had an unusual youth. When she was a teenager, she received basic defense training as part of the Haganah organization, in a historical context marked by conflicts in the region. Over time, she became a recognized figure in topics of education and personal well-being. When actress Jodie Foster was only 8 years old, she was attacked by a lion and briefly carried in its mouth while filming Disney's Napoleon and Samantha. Lady Gaga has an entire genus of ferns named after her. A sequence of DNA spells Gaga, and the ferns have qualities similar to those of Gaga. Some of them resemble her elaborate stage outfits, and one of them is even called Gaga Monster Parva. The original jack-o'-lanterns were carved from turnips, potatoes, and beets, not pumpkins. This tradition comes from Ireland and Scotland, where they were used to ward off spirits during ancient celebrations. When immigrants arrived in North America, they began using pumpkins because they were larger and easier to carve. Over time, they became a characteristic symbol of Halloween. Actress Margaret Hamilton, who is best remembered for her terrifying portrayal of the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz and for scaring children everywhere, was actually a kindergarten teacher before becoming an actress. According to a team of astronomers and geologists led by J. Alexis Rodriguez at the Planetary Science Institute in Tucson, Arizona, there is evidence that there were 2 massive tsunamis on Mars billions of years ago. Both were caused by meteorite impacts and occurred millions of years apart. They created waves up to 150 feet high. In the 18th century, when coins were made of real gold and silver, criminals would scrape the edges of coins and sell the shavings. To prevent this, the United States Mint began adding ridges to coins, a process called reeding, so it would be impossible to shave them without being detected, and also to make counterfeiting more difficult. Today, no coins are made of precious metals, but the tradition has continued on higher value coins. The ridges also help visually impaired people distinguish between coins. The movie released in 1925, Ben-Hur, was the most expensive silent film ever made, with a cost of between $4 and $6 million at that time. According to researchers from the National Hansen's Disease Programs in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, the armadillo is one of the few mammals that carries the bacteria that causes leprosy. In particular, the nine-banded armadillo can naturally harbor Mycobacterium leprae, and it is believed that its low body temperature favors the survival of the bacteria. For this reason, it has also been used in scientific studies to better understand this disease over time. The restaurant and food truck La Poutine from Edmonton collaborated with the company Wild Prairie Soap and created a poutine-flavored lip balm. You cannot make this stuff up. Inspired by KFC making fried chicken-scented sunscreen, the lip balm has sold out almost everywhere since its creation. Although George Washington chose the site for the White House, he never lived there. In fact, he is the only president who did not reside in the White House. The construction of the building began in 1792 and was not completed until the administration of John Adams, who became the first occupant in 1800 when the city of Washington was still developing. Sea anemones are capable of reproducing by cloning themselves. They can split into two through a process called fission, creating genetically identical individuals that remain nearby, forming colonies. Some species can also regenerate entire body parts if they are damaged. In addition, they maintain symbiotic relationships with other marine animals, such as certain fish, to which they provide protection thanks to their stinging tentacles. There is a musical road in Lancaster, California. It was created as a television advertisement for Honda. The road has grooves cut in such a way that, when traveling at about 50 miles per hour, it plays the William Tell Overture. There is a spider that scientists discovered in the Yunnan rainforest in southwestern China that can make itself look like a hanging dry leaf. The leaf-mimicking spider uses a strategy called masquerade, or pretending to look like something else, to protect itself. A tomato has 25% more genes than humans. The simple tomato has 31,760 genes, while we only have about 20,000 genes. However, keep in mind that the amount of genetic material does not indicate how advanced an organism is, which you probably already guessed. On October 29, 1998, the first astronaut to orbit the Earth, John Glenn, made history again by becoming the oldest man to fly into space. He traveled aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery at the age of 77 as part of a NASA study on health problems associated with aging. The first baseball caps were made of straw. They were first used by the New York Knickerbockers on April 24, 1849. Over time, players began using more durable fabric models with longer brims to better protect their eyes from the sun. By the late 19th century, the design evolved into more structured shapes, laying the foundation for modern caps that are now part of both sports and fashion. Cows, sheep, and goats have a hard dental pad under their upper lip instead of front teeth. This dental arrangement helps ruminants gather large amounts of grass and fibrous plants. Thanks to this, they can cut grass with their tongue and lower lip, pulling it with precision. Then, their specialized digestive system allows them to regurgitate the food and chew it again, making better use of nutrients from plants that are difficult to digest. Basketball stars LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and Magic Johnson donated millions of dollars to the Muhammad Ali exhibit at the Smithsonian. The strongest insect in the world is the dung beetle. It can pull 1,141 times its own body weight. That would be like an average person pulling 6 double-decker buses full of people. This record belongs to the species Onthophagus taurus, where males use that strength to compete and secure food, forming balls of dung that also serve as shelter and a reserve for their offspring. Insects do not breathe the same way we do. Oxygen reaches an insect's tissues through small openings in the body walls called spiracles, and then through tiny air-filled tubes called trachea. This system allows them to deliver oxygen directly to their cells without using blood to transport it. Some can even open and close their spiracles to prevent water loss, helping them survive in dry environments. When the Krakatoa volcano in Indonesia erupted in 1883, the sound it produced could be heard thousands of miles away in Australia and on the island of Rodriguez. It was the loudest sound ever recorded on the planet. The explosion generated pressure waves that circled the globe several times and caused devastating tsunamis that swept nearby coasts, while ash and gases altered the global climate for months. The preserved middle finger of Galileo is on display at the Galileo Museum in Florence, Italy. It remains forever making an obscene gesture in the general direction of the church that once censored his theories, destroyed his good name, placed him under house arrest, refused for nearly a century to give the man the decent burial he deserved, and for 350 years forgot to grant him any honor. If you are caught injuring or killing a swan, or stealing one of its eggs in the United Kingdom, you could be fined or sent to jail for up to 6 months. These birds are protected by laws, and traditionally, certain swans are considered symbolic property of the crown. Each year, the counting called swan upping is carried out on the River Thames to record their population and health status. There are eagles, such as the harpy eagle that lives in the tropical forests of Central and South America, that are strong enough to hunt and kill sloths and monkeys. The female can even kill prey weighing up to 20 pounds. Its talons can measure more than 5 inches, comparable to those of a bear, and exert tremendous pressure. In addition, they build enormous nests high in the trees that they can reuse for years while raising a single chick with great care. South African architect Clara de Cruz Almeida has designed a small, portable house that can be packed into a capsule of 258 square feet and shipped anywhere. The Slinky was invented accidentally by Richard James. Richard was a naval engineer, and while working with tension springs in 1943, he discovered that when one of the springs fell, it kept moving. He thought it would make a great toy, and that is how the Slinky toy was born. Doug Martin, a Ford engineer, has developed a system that collects condensation from the air conditioner and allows you to drink the water from a faucet on the dashboard. But first, the water is routed through a filter that removes any particular organic contaminants. You would have to be very thirsty to drink car water. The word emoji is the Japanese term for picture characters. Emojis were actually born out of necessity back in 1999, when mobile operators struggled to meet the messaging needs of 80 million users of a rapidly growing cell phone technology, and their hope was that an emoji would reduce the need for multiple text messages or even picture messages. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart proposed marriage to Marie Antoinette when they were both only 7 years old, and she said no. The London-based ice cream company, The Lickitators, partnered with breastfeeding activist Victoria Hiley to celebrate the birth of the royal baby number 2 by relaunching its breast milk-flavored ice cream. The ice cream is called Royal Baby Gaga. It is made from donated breast milk that has been screened with hospital standards and Madagascar vanilla.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.